Well, you have been listening to tape of the prosecution witness, Sanford detective Doris Singleton, interviewing George Zimmerman the night of the shooting. But coming up this afternoon, the lead homicide investigator, Detective Chris Serino, could take the stand. You won't miss a moment of that right here on HLN. Once again, HLN law enforcement Mike Brooks with us, HLN contributor Jason Johnson, also attorney Natalie Woodward back with me, and our, of course, Lynn. Welcome to the team, Lynn Berry. Earlier we heard FBI voice expert Krya Phillips, and then we heard Sanford detective Doris Singleton, who interviewed Zimmerman the night of the shooting. So we've been talking about which juror might be most impacted by these two witnesses so far. Natalie, why don't we start with you, and you just choose which you want to talk about, you know, Krya and the scientific evidence and the 911 calls, or if you want to talk about Doris Singleton, the detective here.
Well, I'll talk about the doctor's testimony first. Juror number 37, she is a chiropractor, been a chiropractor. She's going to have a level of understanding on some of the science, maybe that may make her distinguish between some other folks. And when you get back in the jury room, what we hear about is that they all pull from their lives. They're pull from their own experiences. They pull from their background. So she may be someone that they lean to for some of the science information.
Why so much science, by the way? They spent a lot of time with him today, the FBI expert.
I thought that was terrible, to be perfectly honest. Yeah,
Really?
I mean, it was 2.5 hours to say water's wet,
well,
and I don't necessarily think that helped the jurors. I mean, we had reports there were jurors that were yawning during the testimony this morning. It didn't help either side.
There's only
had
one
to
takeaway, and I think
Yeah.
that was him saying at the end of his testimony that if you are familiar with someone's voice and you hear them screaming under the same circumstances, you may recognize that. But still, then they talk about, bias of the examiner, of the person hearing that. So,
But then if you're the prosecution, wouldn't you be like, ding, 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 let me just follow it up again? Is that what you're saying? So I would only know if it's a voice that's familiar to you? Because, I mean, my opinion was every juror would just be like, oh, okay, come on.
You gotta answer that
Tell me it's
question.
just unreliable.
And these are folks who watch TV who expect a certain level of forensic level, when they're looking at and analyzing a crime scene.
Hopefully
or
it won't have
analyzing.
the CSI effect.
Exactly, but they
Hopefully.
answered that question for them. They answered the question of, can't somebody just tell us whose voice it is? No, you can't, and here's why. So that was answering a question that the jurors' minds may have had.
And yet the familiarity thing seemed less important to me because none of the ear witnesses knew either of the people who were in the fight. I mean, the people in the neighborhood who heard, they didn't know Trayvon, they didn't know George Zimmerman, so your actual ear witnesses aren't really going to be that affected by this, and the jury knows that.
All right, so our FBI expert, who we were just talking about, who you said bored everybody to death, for Krya Phillips, and then we've got Doris Singleton, reading George Zimmerman's written statement, talking about what she remembered when she interviewed him that night. Okay, tell me who stands out and which juror is going to be paying attention. You can pick either one.
Well, okay, let me look at my crystal ball here. And I will say, for Dr. Nakasone and also for Officer Singleton, I think juror number 4. She's a female, of course, in her 60s. She's married. And her spouse is a chemical engineer, so she's used to hearing boring banter all the time from her husband. And she served as a safety officer for 25 years. So, I think between Dr. Nakasone and the officer, I think that both of them could appeal to juror number 40.
Okay. We've been getting, if you don't mind, because we've been getting a lot of questions on social, and you guys just jump in, whoever thinks they can answer the question, okay? David wrote in just moments ago saying, does the decision to follow a suspicious person, which is not a crime, negate a person's right to defend himself?
No.
No.
All right. Who wants that? Go ahead, Natalie.
Well, I mean, he was not doing anything illegal by following him either. He wasn't trespassing. He was in an area that he had every right to be in as well. So the question as to whether or not he was then able to defend himself if he was in justifiable fear of his life is a separate question.
The main question is, if he initiated the contact and then wound up shooting him in self-defense, that's no, you can't do that. It's like Jason and I get in a fight. I pick a fight with Jason. Jason starts kicking my butt, and then I pull out my gun and shoot him. No, I'm the one that initiated. That is the big question.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we talked about this a little bit, and we wonder whether or not Detective Serino is going to get into this, but why didn't Zimmerman go up and say, hello, I am a neighborhood watch volunteer.
Exactly.
And that's one of the concerns of Serino that he had mentioned in his police report. Why didn't Zimmerman identify himself and say, listen, is there a problem here? We've had some break-ins. We're concerned.
Was there time for that? Because
Unless
it
it happened so
sounded like it
quickly.
happened so quickly.
That's
if you
the
listen
question.
to all, I mean, I don't know.
No, that's the question.
But see, he could have even been arguing that. Look, even when you're getting attacked, you can say, hey, look, I'm neighborhood watch. I'm neighborhood, get off me. Just like saying I'm a police officer. So I think he had an opportunity if that was something that really could have occurred.
All right, so we got Gene Casares live out of Sanford for us. Gene, are you with us?
I am.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, what a day. We were riveted. Well,
Yeah.
you know, we were talking about the scientific versus the police side of things and how riveting Doris Singleton was just listening to her account of what went down that night, in addition to the written statement.
And I can't tell you what it was like to be in that courtroom and just hear George Zimmerman's voice explaining what allegedly happened that night, and then hearing the written statement being read by Doris Singleton. And you know what's interesting is the audio tape interview was the closest in time truly to when the incident happened. They wasted no time that night. They got him right to the station, and then they almost within minutes started this audio statement. And so it was interesting to see him relate it, and then the Google map went up on the big screen and everybody was following it, and by that Google map you see that he was following Trayvon Martin. Now, that's not a crime to follow somebody, but I think it's pretty clear now what happened.
Another, if you don't mind, anybody, maybe even Gene, you can wait. I'm going to try to get another viewer question in here. Veronica wrote in saying, do we know if manslaughter was offered in a plea before trial? That I don't know. Anyone?
I'm not sure. Gene,
do you know?
I don't think so.
Well, what I can tell you is that I asked Mark O'Mara on camera in an interview in December if there would be a plea deal, if he would plead him, and he said, I will never plead an innocent man. So that was the answer I got to the question. I can't specifically tell you if a plea was offered.
Got it. Do we have time for one more? No? Okay. Final thoughts, guys, before we head to break?
I tell you, it's interesting, and he has been fairly consistent in his statements, but we still got a long way to go.
You're watching live coverage here on HLN, waiting for the lead homicide detective to take the